Wieneke, wide receiver from Maple Grove, Minnesota.
Welcome to another episode of Cold Brews and Catholic Truths. My name is Sean Hussey. I'm really excited for today's episode. I interview my cousin Jake Wieneke. Jake is a professional wide receiver for the Montreal Alouettes, and he just finished his first season with them. Jake is an incredible football player. He's had an incredible football career. But more importantly than that, Jake is a disciple of Jesus. And that's what today's episode is all about. We're going to talk about intentional discipleship. What does it look like to be a follower of Jesus? And we just have a great discussion about what this looks like for Jake as a husband, as a soon-to-be father, and then also what does it look like for him to be a disciple as a professional athlete. This is a really great conversation. I think you're going to take a lot out of it. I hope that it helps you take your next step in your walk with Jesus. Enjoy. All right, Jake. Well, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Cold Brews and Catholic Truths. It's great to be with you today, man. So for those that don't know you, I know you're kind of a legend in the football world and everything like that. But why don't we just start by you just sharing a little bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, I'm your cousin, Sean. I'm Sean's cousin. So that's a big key, and it's been great friends since we were little, and I always just look up to you even though we're the same age, which is how I always had a great friendship with you. And also, as you'll probably hear later, just kind of also came to growing our relationship with the Lord about the same time as you. So that's been cool. But also, I'm a married man. I got a baby on the way here in a couple of weeks. So excited about that. And I play professional football in Canada in the CFL. And so I'm right now during this time of quarantine, I'm out working out every day and just trying to be a great husband, trying to be a great disciple of the Lord, and excited to be a father.
So before we get into things, Jake, I want to just ask you a question. If something comes to mind, what's your favorite memory of playing football? A favorite play or a game or just a moment that comes to mind?
So there's I have so many football memories, so many different things. But I mean, especially just talking to you, the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about football is like how many memories we had as kids playing together. And I think that's just what it's kind of all about. Like, obviously now I get to play like football for a living, but I mean, I just cherish all those times just playing, whether it's in the backyard or going to Charleston and playing with you and then all the cousins. And I mean, I know you, Sean, every time we're just walking around outside as a kid, you guys have a football, just playing catch. I think that's just what makes it so much fun, and just the relationships built along the way. And so I guess if we had to have one memory, I would say when we were in Charleston, went to Eastern Illinois field, we'd always sneak onto the field, and we found a way in because you know the ins and outs. So we found our way into the field. We'd always play, me and you, on the same team against Clark and Cam, and I think we'd always win, but that's not the point. Yeah. But then as we were leaving, we were hopping over the fence, and some guy came and caught us. And I just remember him just saying, like, I'm going to charge you with breaking and entering or something. But I mean, just the times. Well, we always talk about that story, so us just sneaking onto the field, just finding a way to play football.
That's hilarious, man. I do remember that. Oh my gosh. We're playing in the pitch black. You can't even see the football.
Yeah. We got our night vision on or something.
Yeah, it's all handoffs. Oh man. Awesome, man. Well, that's a great memory. I'm glad that you still have that kind of joy about playing the game, even doing it now as a professional. That's awesome to hear. So before we get into today's episode and the content a little bit, I just want to remind everybody listening, please like this video, like this video, comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe. The more you like these videos, the more it puts it in front of people, helps people find out about this show. And so if this has been a blessing for you in any way, and you want to share it with somebody else, just go ahead and again, like and share, subscribe. That helps us out a lot as well. So with that, we're going to talk about discipleship today. We're going to talk about really intentional discipleship, and maybe we'll talk about why we make that distinction, or why it can be helpful at least to make that distinction. And we're going to just talk about what does it look like to be a disciple of Jesus. And so kind of to get started with that conversation, Jake, I just really think it'd be helpful if you could just share a little bit about your own story, your own life of following Jesus. Have you always believed in God? Did you grow up in a family that believed in God? I mean, of course I know this, but just for our listeners, what's been your experience with religion, and how has it led you to where you're at today?
Yeah, so I mean, I grew up in a amazing family, just two amazing parents who love the Lord, and grew up in the Catholic Church. And I mean, I even remember I always enjoyed, I think, going to mass growing up. I even remember going, and I loved singing. I always just loved singing. I can't sing quite as good as you, Sean, but I remember always just coming to mass with you. I love just singing next to you. I love just worshiping, and I always just enjoyed going, I think. But I think growing up, I always just thought I was kind of a great Christian. I kind of had it all figured out together. And then really, I didn't really realize until I got to college, and I had a mentor of mine who, my first weekend on campus in college, I went to South Dakota State University, and went to the Newman Center, went to mass on Sunday, and his name was Andrew, came out to me and said, "Hey, how are you doing?" Introduced himself. He's like, you want to meet up and get lunch sometime?" So we met up and continued to meet weekly, and started inviting me to Bible studies, and then he challenged me to pray. And he asked me, he said, how's your prayer life doing? I said, "Oh man, it's great. I mean, I pray before I eat, pray before bed, pray when I get up. My prayer life is great." And he's like, "Well, like," he said, "Well, do you ever talk with the Lord? Do you ever just sit and talk with the Lord? Do you ever pray with Scripture?" And that was just so foreign to me. I was like, what do you mean? I mean, I just told you about my prayer life. And so then he challenged me. He said, "All right, we have this chapel here in the Newman Center. It's open 24 hours. So he said, it's on campus, very convenient. I live right next to it on the dorms." He said, "Just try to stop by. It can be 10 to 15 minutes a day on your way to class or something, and just sit with the Lord." And so it started with that, just sitting with the Lord 10 to 15 minutes a day. And really, for the first time in my life, I actually started just talking, just listen to God. Before that, I mean, I always kind of just did what I thought was right, what I thought would go along with what God wanted me to do, or what the Bible would say, or what the church taught. But I didn't really know. I was like, this is what I think I've been taught. This is what I've heard at church. But I didn't really know until I actually started diving in to the Word. Then he started challenging me to read. So I started reading through the New Testament, and started just sitting with that and praying over the words that I was reading. And I was like, man, like it just started convicting me and coming to reality. And I was like, man, like I've heard about Jesus, but like I'm getting to know him now. And I actually started digging into Scripture and started being like, man, like this is what it means to be a disciple. This is what it means to follow the Lord. And I started just falling in love with him through that, and just started hearing just that small voice, started hearing the Spirit just speaking to me. And it changed my life forever. And since then, it's a daily encounter. I mean, I'm a firm believer. And like he said, like, come every day. He started challenging me like, hey, like you've been coming to the chapel, come every day. And I think that's a big thing. It's just always been on my heart. And I think it's in Luke's gospel. All the gospels say, Jesus says, come after me, take up your cross and follow me. And in Luke's gospel, I think Luke 9:23 says, take up your cross daily and follow me. Mm. And I think it's just so powerful. I'm so glad that detail is in there. And it's just something that's really convicts me. And it's just like, man, like I need to spend this time daily. I need to walk with the Lord daily. I need to spend time in prayer and reading my Bible and in the sacraments daily. And I think just the more I'm doing that to this day, the more I've been able to just grow in my relationship with the Lord. And I mean, so to today, right now, I'm just trying to seek after the Lord and just spend time with him daily. If I do anything in a day, I think the most important thing is just to spend that time, intentional time with the Lord.
That's awesome, man. It makes me think right away of like in Mark's gospel and in many places after Jesus like is, performs miracles or heals people or has like great teaching where like it says rising very early before dawn, he goes off to a deserted
Oh,
place
man.
where he prays and just has that
I love
intentional
that.
set aside time with the Lord, this daily time. And I think as we're going to talk about today, like this intentional, this ongoing conversion that I hear so beautifully in your story, Jake, is just such a important aspect about being a disciple. I think you definitely had this moment, early on in college of encountering this missionary and him like challenging you and leading you closer to the Lord and had this pretty radical conversion of walking with him. But that continued, like the Lord has continued to work on your heart even since then and still
Wow.
does, and so too for me, because as you said, yeah, there is this daily, we have to pick up our cross daily, as you said, and follow Jesus. So it doesn't just happen one time, and we're good to go, so to say, but it is something that requires intentionality. And so I think that kind of leads into to the topic of intentional discipleship. And I think sometimes it's helpful. I don't think essential to put the word intentional in front of the word disciple. But I think it does kind of just clarify what you're saying, Jake, that that it's something that we do every day. It's something that we make a conscious decision to choose, or it's a person we make a conscious decision to choose every day, and to do something and do anything every day. And this as an athlete, to do anything well, to have discipline in anything, it takes intentionality, right? It takes a lot of intentionality for us to live that out. And so when we talk about being a disciple, before we kind of get too much into what this looks like in our life, let's just talk a little bit about the word disciple, or what does it mean to be a disciple? And so the word disciple comes from the Latin word for student. And so the disciples of Jesus then, in a basic level, were his students. And if we're going to be a disciple of Jesus, we too are called to be his students. But not students simply in the classroom model that I think we're familiar with today, where we just learn and process information and then make sure that we have the ability to regurgitate that information. But we allow this information, if you will, to change our lives, to change our hearts. So not just to be learners of the word, but to be followers of the word. And that word is a person, right? That word is ultimately Jesus. So to be a disciple of Jesus is to be a student. And again, that's why I think to be an intentional student, we're going above and beyond. We don't just know the right things, know the right information so we can get the right answer on the test, if you will. But we come to know the person. When Jesus calls the apostles, for example, in the Gospel of Mark, when he calls the apostles to himself, he says, to Peter, come and follow me. In the original Greek, we might say that he might be saying, come and follow behind me, more literally. Come and follow behind me. Come and walk in my footsteps. And so again, to be a disciple is to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. So therefore, discipleship, or intentional discipleship, is to become like Jesus. Yeah. So when you hear that, what comes to mind for you, Jake? Do you resonate with that?
Absolutely. I think the first thing that I think about, like I love that, just that definition of student too. It's not like we think about, like, I think about like, oh, I'm just going to sit here and learn, but it's like we're actually walking as he walked. And I think about like to truly be a disciple, like we need to get to know Jesus and get to know who he is. Because I just think about like, well, how can I live? Like, how can I be like someone that I really don't know, that I don't intentionally know and personally know at all? Like, I think about like, if I want to be like, for me as a football player, if I want to be like my favorite receiver, maybe I like Randy Moss. Like, I grew up in Minnesota, so I want to be like Randy Moss. Like, I need to first of all, like study him, watch him, all this stuff, and I get to know him, get to know his game, and try to be like him. So I mean, in Jesus, like I need to get into the Word. I need to spend time with him, get to know him, get to know his heart, get to know how he lives, how he talks, how he moves, how he goes through the day, and then I can do that.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Absolutely. When I think about my own life, like, especially as a kid, and as you said, our stories kind of line up, in terms of like our walk with the Lord. I think we have really similar stories and really similar moments and timeline of conversion, of being called into deeper discipleship. And then also our wives, both, they were our fiancés at the time, and they both entered the Catholic Church full communion, on the exact same day, which is all awesome.
Yeah.
So it lines up. But yeah, exactly. When I think about like myself as a child, like, again, like I never was opposed to God or opposed to my faith in any way, but I definitely followed Jesus at a distance. I was a fan of Jesus. You know, I think I've heard you share it in that way before, Jake. I was really a fan of Jesus.
Yeah.
If I was a follower of anybody, it was Brett Favre and the Green Bay Packers. And there we go. Sorry about that, everybody. I can piece that back together. All right. Anyway, yeah. So as a child, for me, I was more of a follower of Brett Favre, because whatever Brett Favre did, I was going to do. You know, however Brett Favre played the game of football, I was going to watch his every move, and be just like him. I wore the number 4 even, all the way through playing, you know, my high school career, just because I wanted to be. I didn't only want to just observe Brett Favre and like watch him at a distance. I wanted to become the next Brett Favre. I wanted to be just like Brett Favre. And so for me, that was like the center of my life. And that took precedence over, certainly over my faith at that time. But again, this is kind of the call of discipleship. Jesus is saying to each of us, come and follow behind me. Walk in my footsteps. Don't follow me at a distance. Don't just observe what I do. Don't just learn the things that I've taught, but become like me. And I will give you the grace, and I will fill you with my Spirit to be able to do that, right? Because apart from that, of course, we couldn't. Apart from that Holy Spirit that He gives us, we could not become like Him. But that is the invitation, I think. That's the invitation of discipleship, is to follow behind Jesus and to become like Him.
Wow.
So, Jake, for you, like, you know, I know that you're striving in your life to live as a disciple. You know, we talk about that often, and I know that that's a part of everything you do. I mean, it really can't be separated from any aspect of your life. But maybe in a practical way, what does it mean to you, I guess, or what does it look like for you to be a disciple, an intentional disciple of Jesus, in your everyday life? Let's say first, what does that look like to you as a husband and a father?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing too. I think as a disciple, it's like if we can't lead our own home, the people that are closest to us, like how are we going to make disciples of all nations, of all the other people? So I mean, I think that should be our first and foremost priority, is just the people that the Lord has just put directly in front of us. I think it's kind of easy in this time of quarantine to realize that too. It's like, man, like I might not be able to at least physically meet with someone that I usually could, but I can be with who I'm living with. And right now, like, it's definitely my wife, and I also have a full house. I'm living with my parents and my brother, and we also have a roommate who's been living with us, training for the NFL. He actually just signed with the Detroit Lions. So I mean, we got a full house, so that's nice. But I mean, yeah, as a husband, I mean, that's my first and foremost priority is my wife Brenda, and just to be able to learn just to love her with the love of Christ. And I think it even goes back to, even from my testimony, like the most important thing of my day each day, even to be a good disciple, is to spend time with the Lord. And something that me and my wife have really been learning in this time of quarantine, especially, is like, if I don't spend time with Jesus every day, I'm not going to be able to love Brenda very well. I'll try to love her maybe from my own love, or treat her how I think that she wants to be treated or whatever. And it just never works. It just never works out good. I just never able to love her well, to serve her well. I'm just too selfish on my own. My own flesh is just so selfish. But then when I spend intentional time with the Lord, and I let Him and the Spirit just kind of guide the way that I love Brenda, it's so much better, so much more fruitful. Then I give her so much more peace and so much more joy. Because I think especially in a covenant relationship, a marriage, like, we should always be like abounding in joy. I should be able to give her joy. She should give me joy just being around each other. And I think I really realize, like, when there's times where I might think that I'm doing a good job, like, oh, like I'm loving Brenda really well, but it's like she's just getting drained from me, or I'm getting drained from her. It's like, well, something's probably off. And what is that most of the time for me? I think is I'm not spending time with the Lord. I wake up, and if the first thing that I don't do is spend time with the Lord, I know that I'm not going to be able to go love my wife during that day. So I think even in the way that I love my wife, I think it just stems from my own prayer life. And then as it goes on even more, like I'm so excited to have a kid, and for my son or daughter, the way that I want to love them is like, man, like I need to be prayerful about the way that I even serve them as a young baby.
I love the priority of prayer. I love that emphasis. I think it's really telling too, of just of where of where this where our focus should be. It's not simply about, and what I hear in you talking beautifully about your wife and your desire to be a disciple, but your desire to lead your wife and your family to heaven as well, is that it's ultimately a desire to come to know Jesus and to help them come to know Jesus, and that grace will be the driving factor, not simply just because you will it and you work hard enough, that, if I focus hard enough and I focus on loving my wife hard enough, then I'll become like Jesus. But rather it's like, you know what? I cannot do that. As hard as I try, I will fall short of loving my wife the way in which Christ loves. But if I'm rooted in prayer, if I'm rooted in relationship with Jesus, then I know that he can sustain me with the grace to do just that.
Amen.
And so,
Amen.
So with that, just continuing to talk about prayer, I'm really curious, Jake, as to what this looks like to you, what maybe your prayer life looks like, but what does it look like for you to be a disciple, as a professional athlete? So what role, I guess I should say, does faith play in your football career? All right, I'm going to have to stop the episode there. Jake and I talked for a little over an hour, so instead of releasing this episode as a single hour-long episode, I figured that I would break it up into a few parts. So the next 2 parts are coming soon. If you want to get notified about when they come out, please just subscribe to this channel, and you'll get a notification as soon as the next 2 parts come out. You're going to want to subscribe. You don't want to miss the rest of this conversation. We get way more into Jake's life as a professional athlete and what it's looked like for him to be a follower of Jesus in the midst of that world. So stay tuned. Again, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day. God bless you.